What if the next great breakthrough in infrastructure didn't come from a tech lab in Silicon Valley or an engineering school in Switzerland, but from the sun-baked earth of Burkina Faso? For decades, this landlocked West African nation has been buried under the weight of bad roads and broken promises. Roads that wash away with the first heavy rain. Dust trails that choke out entire villages in the dry season. And supply routes that vanish when people need them most. But something has changed. Under the bold and unflinching leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso is doing something no one saw coming. It's rewriting the rules of development, one road at a time. Together with Japanese partners, his government is rolling out an ancient but reimagined technique called dono, and it could revolutionize how the global South builds infrastructure for the next century. This isn't just a story about roads. It's about sovereignty, innovation, and a new kind of Africa, one that's no longer waiting for permission to rise. 1. The forgotten roads of Africa. Why Burkina Faso struggled for so long. What if the world's next big leap in sustainable infrastructure wasn't born in New York, or Tokyo, or Brussels, but on a broken, dust-choked road in Burkina Faso? Let's rewind for a moment. Burkina Faso is a country you don't often hear about in global headlines. It's landlocked, surrounded by 6 other nations, and depends almost entirely on road transport to move goods, people, and ideas. And yet for decades, those very roads have been almost undrivable. In the rainy season, floods rip the roads to pieces. In the dry season, thick dust clogs the air, coats lungs, blinds drivers, and settles on crops. In rural areas, where most of the population lives, fewer than 20% of roads are paved. The rest dirt, sand, gravel, fragile arteries barely holding the country together. Now imagine you're a farmer, growing millet or mangoes in a remote village. You've got a great harvest, but no safe road to get it to market. The bus doesn't come anymore. Trucks won't risk the trip. So what happens? Your crops spoil. Your kids miss school. And in an emergency, the clinic is too far to reach in time. The government tried, aid money came in, projects were launched, but year after year, the roads crumbled again. The asphalt cracked in the heat, concrete eroded in the rains. It wasn't just a construction problem, it was a systemic one. Imported materials were expensive, maintenance was inconsistent, and the designs often not suited for the climate, the terrain, or the people. This is the part of the story most of the world never sees. In a global economy, bad roads don't just mean inconvenience, they mean isolation, lost trade, broken healthcare systems, children walking hours to school, women giving birth on the side of the road. So the question isn't just why are the roads so bad? It's why have they stayed that way for so long? And maybe deeper still, what happens when a nation stops waiting for foreign solutions and builds its own? Because now, something is shifting. Something that's not just changing roads, but changing the idea of what's possible. 2. Captain Ibrahim Traore, the young leader behind the road revolution. Every movement needs a moment, and every moment needs a leader. In the case of Burkina Faso, that leader wasn't a seasoned politician in a tailored suit. He was a 35-year-old artillery captain, marching into the capital with dust on his boots, fire in his voice, and a revolutionary blueprint in his hands. Captain Ibrahim Traore didn't rise through elections, or foreign backing, or elite circles. He rose through the cracks of a broken system. Let's rewind for a moment. Burkina Faso has seen 9 successful coups since gaining independence in 1960. Years of instability, Western-backed governments, promises made, promises broken. And in the middle of it all, a generation that grew up watching foreign troops patrol their cities while rural villages sank deeper into neglect. Ibrahim Traore was one of them. Born in 1988, just a year after revolutionary icon Thomas Sankara was assassinated, Traore came of age under a regime that looked west, while the people looked for water, for roads, for hope. He trained as an artillery officer, served in the northern Sahel, and what he saw there changed him. Entire villages cut off for months, medical emergencies with no way out, farmers forced to carry produce for hours, only to watch it rot before reaching a market. The roads weren't just crumbling, they were erasing opportunity. And so he started asking the questions others avoided. Why, after billions in foreign aid, was Burkina Faso still standing on broken ground? Why were French troops stationed in the country, but unable or unwilling to stop the violence? Why were foreign contractors flown in to build roads that washed away each rainy season while local engineers stood idle? Here's where things get interesting. When Traoré overthrew the French-aligned government in September 2022, many saw it as just another coup, another power grab. But that's not what happened. He called it a rectification, not just of politics, but of purpose. And unlike the men before him, he didn't fly to Paris for approval. He didn't seek IMF loans or white glove summits. He went to the villages. He listened. He asked what they needed. And what they needed more than anything was connection. Not just metaphorical connection, but literal, physical connection. Roads, bridges, access. And that's where the story of Dono begins. Because Ibrahim Traore didn't just want to fix the roads, he wanted to redefine how roads are imagined, built, and owned. Instead of pipelines of concrete from Europe, he envisioned bags of packed earth from the local hillside. Instead of dependency, he saw sovereignty. Instead of waiting for foreign experts, he trained his own. Maybe that's the real revolution. Not the coup, not the headlines, but the quiet decision to build a road with your own hands, your own soil, your own people. Because what happened next surprised even the experts. 3. Introducing the Dono technique. What it is and why it works. What if the future of road building didn't start in New York, London, or Tokyo, but in a small, landlocked village in Burkina Faso? Not with concrete, not with steel, but with earth, packed into bags, layered by hand, built by the very people who walk these roads every day. It's called the Dono technique, a Japanese innovation that's being reimagined in West Africa. And if you haven't heard of it, you're not alone. Let's break it down. The Dono technique, named after the Japanese word for earth bag, is a construction method that uses locally available materials like clay, gravel, laterite, sand, and even recycled debris to build tough, long-lasting roads. Instead of pouring asphalt that melts in heat or cracks in floods, workers pack earth into sacks, stack them like bricks, reinforce them with geotextiles, and layer until the roadbed is solid, durable, and surprisingly smooth. Think of it like this. Instead of importing million-dollar machinery and foreign labor, why not build roads using the land itself, and more importantly, the people themselves? Let's meet Awa, a market vendor from the outskirts of Bobo Dioulasso. Before the Dono Road, her produce spoiled on the journey. Now she's cutting delivery time in half and making more trips per week. Here's where things get interesting. This method, originally developed by Japanese engineers for regions hit by natural disasters, was never meant to be flashy. It was meant to be resilient, cheap, and adaptable. In Japan, it helped rebuild after tsunamis. In Burkina Faso, it's helping rebuild after decades of infrastructure neglect. But this isn't just a story about roads. It's a story about rethinking development itself. Because the Dono method flips the script. From dependency to self-reliance. From imported solutions to indigenous execution. From extractive projects to community-owned progress. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's better for the environment. And most importantly, it works. In a world chasing high-tech breakthroughs, sometimes the real innovation is in the simplicity of the soil beneath your feet. So here's the question. If a country like Burkina Faso can build stronger roads with earth and community, what else could the world be building differently? 4. Building better, cheaper, greener, the economic and environmental impact. Let's rewind for a moment. What if we told you that 1 kilometer of traditional asphalt road can cost a government over $500,000, but a Dono road almost 60% less with no compromise on durability? Sounds impossible, right? But here's where things get really interesting. The Dono technique slashes costs by ditching imported materials, no need for tons of asphalt or expensive concrete. Instead, it leans into what's already available: clay, laterite, recycled gravel, materials that don't have to cross oceans to reach a construction site. That means less foreign debt, less reliance on aid, and more money staying in the country. And the ripple effect's huge. More road projects, more local jobs, more training programs, more economic activity in remote regions. This isn't just a public works project, it's a development engine. But here's the twist that surprised even the experts. The Dono method isn't just affordable, it's green. Traditional road construction often means clearing land, cutting down trees, and digging deep into fragile ecosystems. But Dono roads are different. Because they rely on compacted earth and recycled materials, they drastically reduce emissions, protect local biodiversity, and leave a smaller ecological footprint. Remember Awa, the vendor from earlier. Her road was built in half the time, with half the carbon, and with her community's own hands. Now that's sustainable infrastructure from the ground up. And here's something the global community is watching closely. These roads last longer in Burkina Faso's brutal climate. They resist erosion, handle flooding, and don't crack under the sun's punishing heat. Fewer repairs, lower maintenance budgets, more reliability for the people who rely on them daily. What if climate resilience doesn't have to come with billion-dollar budgets and shiny tech? What if the most effective solution is a bag of earth, carefully stacked by local hands, in service of local lives? Burkina Faso isn't just saving money or saving time. It's reclaiming its future and doing so in a way that protects both people and planet. So the next time someone asks what sustainable development looks like, maybe don't point to a skyscraper. Point to a dirt road in West Africa. 5. Real-life transformation stories from the ground. Let's shift focus from the big picture to the people. Because it's one thing to talk about road innovation in theory, but it's something else entirely when you see how one road can change an entire life. Meet Awa, a mother of 4 and local produce vendor in the outskirts of Kaya. For years, Awa would wake at 4 a.m., strap her goods to a donkey cart, and begin a 3-hour journey down cracked, muddy trails hoping to reach the market before the sun became unbearable. Sometimes, rain would erase the road completely. Sometimes, dust storms blinded drivers. And sometimes, Awa never made it to market at all. But today, thanks to a new Dono-built road, that same trip takes 35 minutes. That's not just a smoother commute. That's more hours with her kids. That's fresh produce that doesn't spoil in transit. That's income finally steady, finally enough. And Awa's not alone. In the town of Dédougou, School attendance shot up 22% after roads were paved with the dono technique. Before, students walked miles on roads so broken that even motorbikes avoided them. Now teachers say classrooms are fuller and dropouts are down. Imagine you're a high school senior with a dream to become a nurse. But every storm cuts off access to school for days. That's not just an inconvenience. That's a stolen future. Now imagine that same student biking safely down a reliable road, not just arriving at school, but arriving on time every day. And then there's Isa, a farmer near Tenkodogo, whose entire livelihood once hinged on whether trucks could reach his field. In the dry season, dust clogged the engines. In the wet season, the roads disappeared. Now, with compacted earth roads that breathe with the land, Isa sells his yams to 3 new markets. His income doubled in under a year. And all of it built not by outsiders, but by the hands of neighbors and cousins and friends. Locals trained, locals paid, roads that feel personal. Here's where things get beautiful. The Dono Road isn't just a path. It's a thread stitching dignity back into places that felt forgotten. Because when you build the road, you're not just connecting villages, you're reconnecting people to possibility. 6. The power of local labor. Creating jobs and training builders. What if I told you the greatest engine of development in Burkina Faso today isn't a foreign loan, a flashy machine, or a billionaire-backed app? It's the hands of everyday people, farmers, masons, school dropouts. Men and women once overlooked are now becoming the architects of their own communities. And here's where it gets really interesting. This revolution is happening not just with tools, but with training. The government, in partnership with JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, did something simple, but powerful. They didn't just import a method, they transferred a skill set. Through local workshops, field demos, and on-the-ground mentoring, hundreds of young Burkinabe have been trained to build, not just watch others build. In Ouagadougou and Bobo Dioulasso, entire training camps have sprung up. People once unemployed now wake up with purpose to reshape their country 1 kilometer at a time. Instead of depending on foreign contractors or expensive engineers from abroad, Burkina Faso is growing its own generation of builders. This isn't just about infrastructure, it's about agency. Every time a road is paved with the dono technique, a village doesn't just gain access, it gains ownership. People are hired locally, they're paid, they learn, and they don't leave when the last stone is placed. They stay, they maintain, they improve, because they built it. Narrator. Reflective. What if the future of global development didn't come from high-tech drones or multi-billion-dollar aid packages? What if it came from jobs that dignify, not just subsidize? Burkina Faso's road revolution is proving something profound. People don't need saving. They need opportunities. Here's the twist that surprised even development experts. For every kilometer of Dono Road laid, up to 15 local workers get trained and paid. And once trained, they take those skills to the next village. And the next, it's a ripple effect, not of charity, but of capability. And in a world still asking how to create sustainable development, perhaps the better question is, what happens when communities are trusted to build their own tomorrow brick by brick, bag by bag, road by road? 7. From road dust to digital maps. The role of technology and data. Let's shift gears for a moment from earthbags and gravel to satellites and software. Because while the Dono technique is impressively low-tech, Burkina Faso's road revolution isn't stuck in the past. In fact, the country is quietly becoming a proving ground for a deeper transformation, one powered by digital tools, open data, and geo-mapping platforms. Here's where things get interesting. In the old days, road planning in Burkina Faso often relied on paper maps, dusty government archives, and guesswork. Engineers didn't always know which roads existed, which were failing, or even which communities needed help the most. That's like trying to heal a patient without an X-ray. But today, thanks to partnerships with groups like OpenStreetMap, UNOSAT, and local tech hubs, Burkina Faso is digitizing its roads one dirt path at a time. Using drones, GPS tagging, and mobile-based field surveys, community volunteers and engineers are creating real-time, interactive maps of the country's road network. These aren't just pretty visuals. They're actionable data showing which roads are washed out, which routes connect markets to farms, and where to build next for maximum impact. Imagine a health worker in a remote clinic using a phone app to track which roads are passable during the rainy season, or a village mayor overlaying flood risk maps with Dono-built roads to spot where future reinforcements are needed, or even a local youth coder helping map his own neighborhood, turning road building into a civic tech movement. And here's the twist that surprised even the experts. This digital infrastructure isn't just being imported, it's being co-created by Burkinabe youth. Across Ouagadougou and Bobo-Dioulasso, young engineers, GIS students, and citizen mappers are leading the charge. It's tech, not just for them, but by them. This blending of ancient earth and cutting-edge data is reshaping how development is done. It means fewer top-down decisions and more community-led insight. It means that when a road collapses, it's flagged in real time. When a new route is built, it gets logged and tracked for future planning. And perhaps most importantly, it creates a culture of transparency and accountability. Because now, any Burkinabe citizen with a smartphone can literally see the road ahead and hold leaders accountable for how it's built. So what can we learn from all this? That the future of infrastructure in Africa might not be found in shiny mega-projects, but in the power of combining local knowledge with digital access. That even in a landlocked country often left off the tech radar, data is becoming a new form of empowerment. And maybe, just maybe, the road from dust to digital could start with a single hand-packed bag of earth mapped not by consultants in Geneva, but by a village coder in Ouagadougou. Let's pause on that. 8. Challenges. Still ahead. What could go wrong? Let's not romanticize this. Every revolution, no matter how grounded in good soil, faces resistance. And Burkina Faso's road-building transformation is no exception. Because for every packed earth success story, there are still fault lines that could crack the foundation. Let's rewind for a moment. You've got a method that's cost-effective, eco-friendly, and community-led. Sounds bulletproof. Right. But here's where things get complicated. First, funding. The Dono technique may be low cost compared to asphalt giants, but it's not zero cost. Scaling this initiative across 45,000 rural villages takes long-term investment, and not just from partners like JICA or a few development agencies. It needs a national commitment and financial stamina. What happens when political winds shift or when donors turn their gaze elsewhere? Second, climate change. Yes, Dono roads are designed to withstand harsh weather, but Burkina Faso's climate is growing more extreme by the year. Flash floods, rising temperatures, desertification. Building tough roads is one thing. Maintaining them when the earth itself is shifting beneath your feet, that's another challenge entirely. Third, skills gap. Right now, training programs are underway. But will there be enough trained engineers, local supervisors, and quality assurance personnel to keep up with the pace of construction? One poorly built road can unravel trust faster than a rainy season. And fourth, politics. Infrastructure has always been a tool of power used to win votes, reward allies, or sideline dissent. What happens when road building becomes a political football, or worse, when corruption seeps into the procurement of materials, turning an empowering method into a profit machine for the few? Let's not forget Burkina Faso is still navigating internal conflict, regional insurgencies, and the lingering legacy of decades of neglect. Any of these could derail the progress made so far. But here's the twist that matters. The fact that these challenges exist doesn't make the Dono experiment weaker, it makes it real. Because genuine change is never smooth. It's muddy, imperfect, and paved with setbacks. And yet it's moving forward. Each new kilometer isn't just a road, it's a vote of confidence, a marker that says we're building for ourselves now. So, can things go wrong? Absolutely. But maybe the more powerful question is, what happens if it goes right? 9. A model for Africa. Can other countries follow Burkina Faso's lead? What if the blueprint for Africa's infrastructure future wasn't written in Brussels or Beijing, but in the red dust of rural Burkina Faso? Let's zoom out for a moment. Across the continent, countries are grappling with the same challenges: outdated roads, ballooning infrastructure costs, and rural communities cut off from opportunity. For years, the default solutions came from outside multi-million-dollar highway projects funded by foreign banks, built by foreign contractors, and maintained, if ever, by promises that rarely lasted. But Burkina Faso flipped that script. With the Dono technique, we're seeing something radically different: infrastructure made by locals, using local materials for local benefit, and it's catching attention. In Kenya, urban planners are now studying Dono's layered earth design for flood-prone neighborhoods. In Senegal, engineers have attended training workshops to learn how to replicate the cost savings. And in Malawi, climate researchers are calling the model one of Africa's most resilient infrastructure breakthroughs. But let's be clear, it's not just about roads. It's about mindset. What if development wasn't defined by how many cranes dot your skyline, but by how many people are empowered to build their own future? What if sovereignty wasn't just about elections and flags, but about being able to pave your own streets literally? That's the quiet revolution happening in Burkina Faso, and it's sending a signal far beyond its borders. So, can other African countries follow this lead? They already are. Not all at once, and not without friction. But the interest is real, and the momentum is growing. Governments are watching. Youth movements are organizing. Community leaders are asking new questions. If they did it, why can't we? And here's where things get interesting. This isn't a story about copying Burkina Faso. It's about being inspired by it and adapting the lessons to different landscapes, cultures, and needs. Because the Dono method isn't just a technique. It's a symbol, a challenge, a possibility. Imagine a future where Africa's greatest innovations aren't imported, but grown from the soil beneath its own feet. And maybe, just maybe, it all started with a dusty road, stitched together by hope, resilience, and the hands of those who refused to wait for permission. 10. Lessons for the world. What Americans can learn from a landlocked nation. Let's be honest, when most Americans think of Burkina Faso, if they think of it at all, they imagine a small, struggling country in West Africa. Remote, dusty, fragile. But what if we've been looking the wrong way? What if, in a time when billion-dollar infrastructure plans stall in Congress, when potholes linger for months in small towns, and when supply chains choke under the weight of concrete and steel, a breakthrough quietly unfolded thousands of miles away, not in Silicon Valley, but in a village outside Ouagadougou. Let's rewind. In Burkina Faso, They didn't wait for a perfect budget or a high-speed rail promise. They asked, what do we already have? Packed earth, local labor, community will, a vision. That's the genius behind the dono technique. Not just the engineering, but the mindset. Instead of outsourcing solutions, they turned inward. Instead of concrete dependency, they leaned into resilience. Instead of flashy top-down development, they built roads from the bottom up with the people who would use them. Now ask yourself, what would happen if small towns in Appalachia tried this approach? If tribal nations in the American Southwest explored community-built, climate-adapted roads? If Detroit's abandoned lots became training grounds for homegrown infrastructure movements? Because this isn't just about roads. It's about rethinking progress. It's about asking who builds the future, and more importantly, who gets to own it. Burkina Faso doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but it has something the world often forgets to look for: agency, innovation, and a deep belief that solutions don't always need to be imported to be revolutionary. So maybe next time we talk about developing nations, we pause and ask ourselves who's really leading the way. And maybe, just maybe, the next big thing won't come from a tech lab in California, but from the calloused hands of builders laying roads under the Sahel sun. Because sometimes, the most powerful ideas rise not from where the world is looking, but from where it's been looking away.